Silas Hartwell dropped his shovel into the frozen earth and stared at the small body wrapped in his dead wife's quilt. 7 years old, dark hair matted with snow, lips blue as winter sky. "Please, mister," the boy beside him whispered through cracked lips. "She stopped breathing last night. I carried her all the way here. Mama said you could save anybody." Silas hadn't saved anyone in 4 years. Not since Martha died in this very house calling his name while he stood helpless with all his medical training worth nothing. "What's her name, son?" "Lily. Her name's Lily." If this story touches your heart, please subscribe to our channel and follow this tale to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far our story travels. The first thing Silas Hartwell noticed wasn't the boy. It was the trail of blood in the snow leading from the eastern ridge down to his fence line, red drops frozen into the white like scattered rubies. He'd been digging a grave for old Scout, his cattle dog of 12 years. The ground was stubborn, frozen solid from 3 days of bitter Wyoming winter. His hands ached. His back screamed. At 51, his body remembered every wound from the war, every sleepless night, every failure. Scout had been the last creature alive who remembered Martha, the last pair of eyes that had watched her knead bread in the kitchen, humming songs from her Virginia childhood. Now even that connection was gone. "Mister..." Silas straightened, reaching instinctively for the Colt at his hip. His fingers found empty leather. He'd left it inside, not expecting trouble while burying a dog. "Mister, please." Through the swirling snow, a figure emerged. Small, staggering, dragging something behind him across the frozen ground. Silas climbed out of the half-dug grave and walked toward the fence. As the figure drew closer, details sharpened through the white curtain of winter. A boy, maybe 10 or 11, thin as a fence post. His coat was torn, his face streaked with frozen tears and something darker. Blood, Silas realized. The boy was bleeding from somewhere beneath his shirt, but it was what he dragged that stopped Silas cold. A makeshift travois, 2 branches lashed together with strips of cloth. On it lay a smaller form, wrapped in a threadbare blanket already stiff with frost. The boy reached the fence and stopped. His legs buckled, but he caught himself refusing to fall. His pale blue eyes found Silas's face with desperate intensity. "Are you Dr. Hartwell?" The title hit Silas like a physical blow. No one had called him that in 4 years. He'd buried that name alongside Martha, alongside the soldiers he'd failed to save, alongside every promise he'd ever made about healing the sick. "Who told you that name, boy?" "My mama." The boy's voice cracked. "She said find Dr. Hartwell at Whisper Creek. Said you could save anybody. Said you was the best doctor she ever knew." Silas's jaw tightened. "Your mama's mistaken. I ain't been a doctor in a long time." "Please." The boy's small hands gripped the fence rail, knuckles white. "My sister. She got the fever 2 days ago. Wouldn't stop shaking. Then last night she just..." He couldn't finish. Silas looked at the travois, at the small, still form beneath the frozen blanket. He already knew what he'd find. He'd seen enough death to recognize its stillness from 20 paces. "What's your name, son?" "Jacob Brennan. Most folks call me Jake." "And your sister?" "Lily." Jake's voice broke on the name. "She's 7. She ain't never hurt nobody in her whole life." Silas ducked through the fence rails and knelt beside the travois. His hands moved automatically, pulling back the blanket, despite knowing the outcome. 4 years of refusing to practice medicine, and still, his fingers found the child's throat, searching for a pulse that wouldn't be there. Lily Brennan's face was peaceful beneath a thin layer of frost. Dark hair, delicate features, skin pale as candle wax. She looked like she was sleeping except for the bluish tint around her lips, the stillness that no sleeping child ever possessed. "She's gone, Jake." Silas spoke softly but clearly. No point in gentle lies. "I'm sorry." "No." Jake shook his head violently. "No, you're lying. Mama said you could save anybody. You're the miracle doctor. She said so. Your mama was wrong. Silas pulled the blanket back over Lily's face. Where is she now, your mama? Jake's face contorted with anguish. Hiding. In the old Culver cabin about 5 miles east. She's hurt bad, mister. Real bad. Hurt how? Shot. Jake's voice dropped to a whisper. Men came 3 nights ago. Shot my pa dead. Shot Mama, too. She told me to run to take Lily and find you. Silas stood slowly, his mind racing. What men? 5 of them, led by a man named Cole. Marcus Cole. He wanted our land, said there was gold on it. Pa told him no, and then... Jake's legs finally gave out. He collapsed to his knees in the snow beside his sister's body. I tried to hurry, mister. I tried so hard. But Lily got sick and she was so heavy and the snow wouldn't stop falling. Silas stared down at the boy, at the blood seeping through his torn shirt, at the trembling shoulders that carried more weight than any child should bear. Marcus Cole. The name echoed through his memory like a gunshot in an empty canyon. That wound on your side, Silas said. Let me see it. It ain't nothing. Jake clutched his shirt protectively. Lily needed help more, and now Mama needs help. You gotta save her, mister. You gotta. I can't save anyone if you bleed to death on my property. Silas reached down and lifted Jake's shirt before the boy could protest. A crude bandage soaked through with blood and dirt wrapped around his thin torso. Silas peeled it back carefully, revealing an angry red wound just below the ribs. Bullet graze partially healed, but showing clear signs of infection. You were shot, too. One of Cole's men grabbed me. Pa tried to stop him. That's when they... Jake swallowed hard. Pa told me to run. So I ran. Silas studied the boy's face, seeing the guilt written there plain as scripture. This child blamed himself for surviving when his father hadn't. We need to get you inside, Silas said. Clean that wound proper. But Mama... Your mama will still need saving tomorrow. You won't be any help to her if you're dead from blood poisoning. Jake looked at his sister's body, then back at Silas. What about Lily? We can't just leave her out here in the cold. Silas glanced at the half-dug grave on the hillside. Scout would have to share his resting place. The dog wouldn't mind. He'd always liked children. I'll bring her inside. We'll see to her proper, then we'll see to you. Then come morning, we'll go find your mama. Promise. Jake's blue eyes searched his face. Promise you'll save her. Silas had learned long ago never to make promises about life and death. Too many soldiers had believed him when he'd said they'd be fine. Too many mothers had trusted him with their children. Too many wives had looked at him with hope while he held their husband's blood in his hands. Martha had looked at him that same way right before the end. I'll do what I can, he said. That's all any man can offer. He lifted Lily's body from the travois. She weighed almost nothing, a bundle of bones and frozen cloth. Like holding a bird that had fallen from its nest, too fragile for this hard world. Come on, son, let's get out of this cold. The farmhouse loomed ahead, its weathered clapboards gray against the white landscape. It had been a place of warmth once, full of Martha's laughter and the smell of her cooking. Now it stood empty and silent, a monument to everything Silas had lost. Inside he laid Lily's body on the kitchen table. The same table where Martha had died, where he'd held her hand, and watched the light fade from her eyes, despite everything he knew, everything he'd learned, everything he'd sworn to uphold. Sit by the fire, he told Jake, pointing to the chair nearest the wood stove. I'll get it burning proper. He stoked the embers, added kindling, watched the flames catch and grow. Heat began to push back against the bitter cold that had seeped into every corner of the house. Jake sat where he was told, but his eyes never left his sister's still form. She was scared of the dark, he said quietly. Mama always left a candle burning for her. But last night we didn't have no candle, and she was so cold. I held her close as I could, but it wasn't enough. Silas felt something crack inside his chest. A wall he'd spent 4 years building brick by careful brick, mortared with silence and solitude. "It wasn't your fault," he said. "I'm her brother." Jake's voice was fierce despite its trembling. "Pa always said it was my job to protect her." "You're 11 years old. No one expects you to save lives." "You were a doctor. You saved lives. Mama said so." Silas turned from the fire. "I was a doctor during the war. Saw more death than any man should see. Boys younger than you bleeding out in my arms while I tried to stitch them back together." He paused, remembering. "Sometimes I saved them. Mostly I didn't. After a while, the failures start to outweigh the successes, start to feel like the only thing that matters." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then, "Is that why you stopped being a doctor?" "Part of it." "What's the other part?" Silas looked at the kitchen table where Lily lay, then at the empty chair where Martha used to sit for breakfast each morning. "I couldn't save my wife. She got sick 4 years ago, fever that wouldn't break. I did everything I knew how to do, and it wasn't enough. She died right there on that table calling my name." Jake's eyes widened, understanding something about Silas that went beyond words. "And you ain't been a doctor since?" "No. But you're gonna help my mama." Silas met the boy's gaze. "I'm gonna try." He found clean cloths in the cupboard and a pot for boiling water. While it heated, he retrieved his medical bag from the back of the closet where it had sat untouched since Martha's funeral. The leather was cracked, the brass clasp tarnished, but the instruments inside were still good, preserved in oil, just as Martha had insisted. "Take off your shirt," he told Jake. "Let me see that wound proper." The boy obeyed without protest, revealing a torso that was far too thin. Ribs stood out beneath pale skin. The bullet graze was worse than Silas had first thought, inflamed and weeping pus. "This is gonna hurt," he warned, dipping a cloth in carbolic solution. "I don't care about hurting." Jake's jaw set with determination. "Pa's dead. Lily's dead. Hurting don't mean nothing anymore." Silas began cleaning the wound, working methodically despite the boy's winces. "Tell me more about Cole. What exactly did he want with your land?" "Said he had a survey done. Said there was gold under our property enough to make a man rich 10 times over. Offered Pa $500 for the whole claim." Jake's voice tightened. "Pa told him our land wasn't for sale. That's when Cole got mean. He came back with his men 3 nights ago." "Yes, sir, middle of the night. Pa heard horses and went to the door with his rifle. They shot him 'fore he could even raise it." Jake's hands clenched into fists. "Mama was trying to help him when they shot her too, in the shoulder. She was bleeding real bad." "And you and Lily hid?" "Under the house. Crawl space by the kitchen. One of Cole's men found us, dragged me out. That's when this happened." He gestured to his wounded side. "Pa wasn't quite dead yet. He jumped the man, told us to run. They shot him again, right in front of me." Silas wrapped a clean bandage around Jake's torso, securing it firmly. "You got away. Mama could still walk barely. We ran into the woods and hid. She knew about the Culver cabin from years back. Said we'd be safe there while she figured out what to do. And she sent you to find me." Jake nodded. "She said Dr. Silas Hartwell was the only man who could help us. Said she knew you from the war. Said you was the finest surgeon in the whole Union Army." Silas sat back on his heels, studying the boy's face. "What's your mama's name?" "Clara. Clara Brennan. But she used to be Clara Whitmore 'fore she married Pa." The name hit Silas like cannon fire. Clara Whitmore. The young nurse with steady hands and calm eyes who'd worked beside him in the field hospital at Petersburg, who'd held soldiers down while he amputated their ruined limbs, who'd stayed awake 3 days straight during the typhoid outbreak, nursing him back from the edge of death when he'd caught the fever himself. Clara Whitmore, who'd defended him during the inquiry after Marcus Cole lost his leg, who'd testified that Silas had done everything possible to save the limb, that the gangrene had spread too far before Cole was even brought to surgery. Marcus Cole, who'd sworn revenge on the doctor who'd butchered him, who'd pointed a finger at Silas from his hospital bed and promised that one day somehow he'd make him pay. Your mother, Silas said slowly. She was my nurse. During the war. Jake's eyes lit with hope. Then you'll help her. You'll save her. Silas stood his knees protesting after kneeling so long on the hard floor. Through the window he could see the snow still falling thick and relentless. The landscape disappeared beyond 50 feet, swallowed by white. How bad was she wounded when you left? The bullet went through her shoulder. She wrapped it herself, but it wouldn't stop bleeding for a long time. And yesterday morning her eyes got all glassy like... Jake stopped, unable to finish. Like Lily's did. The boy nodded miserably. Infection, Silas thought. Maybe septicemia if she was already feverish. If Clara had been shot 3 days ago and was showing signs of fever, she might already be beyond help. But Clara Whitmore had saved his life once, had stayed by his side when everyone else had given him up for dead, had believed in him when he'd lost belief in himself. He owed her a chance. Get some rest, he told Jake, pointing to the small bedroom off the kitchen. Eat something first. There's bread in the box and dried beef in the pantry. You'll need your strength for tomorrow. We're going after Mama. First light. Soon as this snow lets up enough to see the trail. Jake looked at his sister's body still lying on the kitchen table. What about Lily? I'll see to her tonight. Clean her up proper. Find something fitting to wrap her in. Silas paused. She'll be buried on the hill behind the house. There's a good spot there overlooking the valley. My wife's buried there too. They won't be lonely. Something shifted in Jake's face. Not quite peace, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. Lily would like that. She always wanted to see what was over the next hill. Said heaven was probably just the highest hill there was, where you could see everything at once. Sounds like she was a wise little girl. She was. Jake's voice cracked. She was the best sister anybody ever had. He moved toward the bedroom, then stopped at the doorway. Mr. Hartwell. Just Silas is fine. Silas. The boy tested the name. Thank you for helping us, even though you didn't have to. Get some sleep, Jake. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. After the boy had gone, Silas stood alone in the kitchen with Lily's body. The fire crackled in the wood stove. The wind howled against the windows. Outside, the Wyoming winter showed no mercy, no pause, no hope. He began the gentle work of preparing the child for burial. Washing her face, combing her dark hair, dressing her in one of Martha's old nightgowns, too big, but clean and soft, and somehow appropriate. A woman who'd wanted children of her own finally getting to hold one, even if only in death. As he worked, his fingers found something sewn into the collar of Lily's dress. A small fold of paper carefully hidden. He extracted it with surgical precision and unfolded it to find a birth certificate and a letter from a law firm in St. Louis. The birth certificate showed Lily's true name, Lily Whitmore Cole. Mother, Mary Cole. Father unknown. The letter explained everything. Mary Cole, Marcus Cole's sister, had died giving birth 8 years ago. The child had been placed with a family friend, Clara Whitmore, now Clara Brennan, with Marcus Cole's full consent. But Mary had inherited substantial property from their parents, and as her only child, Lily was the legal heir. An estate valued at $20,000. Marcus Cole had been managing that estate for years, claiming his sister had died childless. Now he wanted the documentation destroyed, and everyone who knew the truth silenced. Silas refolded the papers and tucked them into his shirt pocket. Tomorrow he would save Clara Brennan if he could. But tonight he had a grave to dig and a prayer to say over a little girl who'd done nothing wrong except exist. He carried Lily's body out into the snow wrapped in Martha's wedding quilt. The cold bit at his face, but he barely felt it. He'd been numb for 4 years. What was a little more winter? The grave took hours to dig in the frozen earth. His hands blistered, then bled, then went numb. But he kept digging, kept breaking through the frost, kept making a place for this child who deserved so much more than she'd been given. When he finally lowered Lily into the ground, dawn was breaking over the eastern ridge, painting the snow pink and gold. Lord, Silas said the first prayer he'd spoken since Martha's funeral. "I don't know why you take the innocent and leave the guilty. I don't understand your plan. But if you've got any mercy left for an old man who's lost his way, I'm asking you to guide my hands tomorrow. Help me save Clara. Help me protect that boy." He paused, looking down at the small grave. "And take care of this little one. She was scared of the dark. Maybe you could leave a light on for her." He filled the grave, packing the earth tight against the cold. Then he walked back to the house where Jake was surely awake by now, waiting, hoping, believing in a miracle that Silas wasn't sure he could deliver. But he would try. For the first time in 4 years, he would try. Because sometimes, trying was all a man had left. The sun had barely cleared the ridge when Silas shook Jake awake. "Time to go, boy." Jake sat up instantly, his eyes alert, despite the exhaustion still shadowing his face. "Mama, we're going to find her. Can you ride?" "I can ride." Jake was already pulling on his boots, wincing as the movement pulled at his bandaged wound. "I've been riding since I was 5. Silas handed him a piece of dried beef and a canteen. "Eat while we saddle up. You'll need your strength." In the barn, Silas prepared 2 horses. Thunder, his sturdy gray gelding, and Willow, the gentle mare that had been Martha's. He hadn't ridden Willow since the funeral, but she was calm enough for an injured boy, and today wasn't about sentiment. Today was about survival. "This was your wife's horse?" Jake asked, stroking Willow's nose. "How'd you know that—" "She smells like lavender, like the sachets my mama keeps in her dresser." Jake pulled himself into the saddle, gritting his teeth against the pain. "Ladies always smell like flowers." Silas mounted Thunder without responding. Some observations were too close to the bone for words. They rode east as the winter sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the snow-covered prairie. The storm had passed overnight, leaving behind a world of blinding white and bitter cold. Silas kept them moving at a steady pace, fast enough to make time, but slow enough to watch for trouble. "Tell me about Cole's men," he said, after they'd covered the first mile. "What did they look like?" Jake thought for a moment. "The leader had a scar, right here." He traced a line from his temple to his jaw. "Called himself Davies. The others just did what he told them." "And Cole himself? Fancy clothes, black hat with silver on it. Walked with a cane account of his leg being gone below the knee." Jake glanced at Silas. "Mama said you was the one who took it, during the war." Silas's hands tightened on the reins. "I tried to save it. Gangrene had spread too far." "He don't see it that way." "No, I reckon he don't." They rode in silence for another half-mile before Jake spoke again. "Mama said something else. Said Cole blamed you for everything that went wrong in his life. Said he swore to make you pay someday. Your mama talk about me often. Only when she was teaching me about doctoring. She'd tell stories about the war, about the men she helped save. You was in most of them." Jake paused. "She said you was the best surgeon she ever saw. Said your hands was steadier than anyone's, even when the shells was falling." Silas remembered those hands. Remembered how they'd trembled when he'd held Martha's, watching her slip away. Remembered how they'd shaken the first time he'd tried to pick up a scalpel after the funeral, how he'd put it down and walked away and never looked back. "War was a long time ago," he said. "Man changes." Mama said something about that too. Said even the strongest steel can break if you heat it too many times. Your mama's a wise woman. She's the best. Jake's voice cracked. "That's why we gotta save her." The terrain grew rougher as they approached the creek that marked the halfway point to the Culver cabin. Silas slowed their pace, studying the landscape for any sign of Cole's men. "They'll be looking for you," he told Jake. "Cole knows you got away, knows you might talk. Let 'em look." Jake's jaw set with determination. "I ain't scared of them." "You should be. Fear keeps a man alive." Pa wasn't scared. He stood up to him. "And he's dead." Silas regretted the words as soon as they left his mouth, but Jake needed to understand. Being brave don't mean being stupid. Your pa should have grabbed you and your sister and run. Should have let Cole have the land and started over somewhere else. Jake's eyes flashed with anger. That land was ours. Pa built that house with his own hands. Mama planted a garden. Lily had a swing on the big oak tree. You don't just give that up. You do if it means staying alive. Then what's the point? Jake demanded. What's the point of living if you lose everything that matters? Silas had no answer for that. He'd asked himself the same question 1,000 times since Martha died. They crossed the frozen creek, the horses picking their way carefully over ice-slicked rocks. On the other side, the land rose sharply toward a ridge lined with cottonwood trees, their bare branches rattling in the wind like skeleton fingers. How much farther? Silas asked. Maybe 2 miles. The cabin's in a hollow past them trees. Silas reined Thunder to a stop, holding up his hand for silence. Something had caught his attention, a flicker of movement near the ridgeline barely visible against the snow. "Get down!" he ordered, dismounting quickly and pulling Jake from Willow's back. "What is it?" "Quiet." They crouched behind a fallen log, Silas's hand on his Colt. The movement came again clearer now. A rider, maybe 2, moving along the ridge. "Cole's men," Jake whispered. "Could be." Silas watched the distant figures disappear behind the cottonwoods. "They're heading the same direction we are." "They're going to the cabin. They're going to find Mama." Silas grabbed Jake's arm before the boy could bolt. "We don't know that for certain. Could be hunters, could be travelers. Or it could be them." Jake's voice rose with panic. "We gotta move faster. We gotta get there first." "We will. But we go careful or we don't go at all." They mounted up and continued, but faster now, pushing the horses through snowdrifts that came up to their knees. Silas kept one hand near his revolver, his eyes scanning constantly for danger. The cottonwoods loomed closer. Through the bare branches, Silas could see smoke rising from somewhere beyond, thin and weak, but definitely smoke. "That's the cabin," Jake said, his face brightening. "Mama must have got a fire going. She's still alive." Smoke could mean anything. Could mean Cole's men found her first. Jake shook his head fiercely. "No, she's alive. I know she is." They reached the edge of the trees and dismounted, tying the horses to a sturdy branch. Silas drew his Colt and checked the chambers. "Stay behind me," he told Jake. "No matter what happens, you stay behind me." "But that's not a request, boy. Your mama sent you to fetch me so I could help. Can't help if you get yourself killed being reckless." Jake nodded reluctantly, falling into step behind Silas as they made their way through the cottonwoods toward the source of the smoke. The Culver cabin appeared suddenly half hidden in a natural hollow. It was small and dilapidated, the roof partially collapsed, the windows dark and empty. But smoke curled from the chimney, and fresh footprints marked the snow around the door. Too many footprints, Silas realized. More than one person had been here recently. He held up his hand, stopping Jake, then pointed to a cluster of tracks leading away from the cabin toward the north. Boot prints, at least 3 different sets heading in the direction of town. "Cole's men," Jake breathed. "They was here." Silas approached the cabin door, his Colt raised. "Clara," he called softly. "Clara, it's Silas Hartwell. Your boy found me." Silence. "Clara, if you can hear me, make some kind of sound." From inside came a weak moan, barely audible through the weathered wood. Silas pushed open the door, keeping low in case of ambush. The interior was dark and cold, the fire in the small hearth reduced to dying embers. And in the far corner, on a pile of ragged blankets, lay Clara Brennan. "Mama!" Jake pushed past Silas before he could stop him, rushing to his mother's side. "Mama, I'm here. I found Dr. Hartwell. Everything's gonna be okay." Clara's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and bright with fever. "Jake, baby, is that you?" "It's me, Mama. I'm here." Silas knelt beside them, his medical training taking over, despite 4 years of neglect. Clara's face was flushed and slick with sweat, her breathing shallow and rapid. The crude bandage on her shoulder was soaked through with blood, and something else pus yellowish and foul-smelling. "The infection's bad," he said gently, lifting the bandage. "She needs surgery. We have to drain this and clean it proper." "Can you do it?" Jake demanded. "Can you save her?" "I don't know." Silas met the boy's eyes honestly. "But I'm going to try." Clara's hand found Silas's wrist, gripping with surprising strength. "Silas," she whispered. Her voice cracked and dry. "You came." "Your boy's persuasive." He helped her take a small sip of water from his canteen. "Should have known you'd end up somewhere like this, Clara. You always did have a talent for finding trouble." A ghost of a smile crossed her fever-bright face. "Learned it from you. The men who did this. Cole's men. They were here." Clara nodded weakly. "This morning, looking for Jake and Lily. I told them the children got away. Told them I sent them to town to the sheriff." "They believed you." "Don't know. They left, but Davy's the one with the scar. He said they'd be back. Said Cole was coming himself." Her grip on Silas's wrist tightened. "Where's Lily? Is she safe?" Silas looked at Jake, saw the boy's face crumple with grief. "Mama," Jake said softly. "Lily didn't make it. The fever took her, night before last." Clara's eyes widened, then squeezed shut as a sound escaped her lips. Not quite a scream, not quite a sob. Something between the two that spoke of a pain beyond words. "My baby," she moaned. "My little girl. I'm sorry, Mama." Jake was crying now, tears streaming down his dirty face. "I tried to save her. I carried her as fast as I could. But she just stopped breathing and I didn't know how to." "Not your fault." Clara pulled her son close despite the agony the movement must have caused. "Never your fault, baby. You did everything you could." Silas gave them a moment, turning away to examine the cabin. The windows were intact, but filthy, allowing little light. The fireplace was functional but small. Not ideal conditions for surgery, but he'd worked in worse during the war. "We need to move her," he said, interrupting their grief with necessity. "Back to my place. I've got proper supplies there, clean instruments, medicine." "She can't ride," Jake protested. "Look at her." "We'll make a travois like you did for Lily. It'll be slow going, but we'll manage." Clara's eyes opened, finding Silas's face. "The documents," she said urgently. "Lily's birth certificate. The letter from the lawyer. Did Jake—" "I have them." Silas patted his shirt pocket. "I found them sewn into her dress. I know what Cole's really after now." "Then you understand." Clara's voice gained strength despite her weakened state. "It's not just about the land. It's about the money. $20,000 that should have gone to Lily. Money he's been stealing for years. And with Lily dead, you and Jake are the only ones who can prove his fraud. He'll kill us." Clara stated it as simple fact. "He'll kill all of us. You too, now that you're involved." "Let him try." Silas stood, his jaw set with determination. "I've been waiting 4 years for something worth fighting for. Reckon I just found it." He spent the next hour constructing a travois from fallen branches and strips of cloth, working quickly, despite the cold numbing his fingers. Jake helped where he could, fetching supplies and keeping watch for Cole's men. When the travois was ready, Silas carefully lifted Clara onto it, cushioning her wounded shoulder as best he could with folded blankets. "This is gonna hurt," he warned her. "Every bump, every rock. Can you handle it?" "I've handled worse." Clara's eyes met his, and for a moment, Silas saw the young nurse who'd stood beside him through the worst days of the war. Bloody and exhausted, but never broken. Never giving up. "I know you have," he said softly. They set out, Silas leading Thunder with the travois, attached Jake, riding Willow close behind. The return journey was slower, more treacherous. Every jolt of the travois drew a gasp from Clara, though she bit down on a leather strap to keep from crying out. Halfway back, Jake suddenly pulled Willow to a stop. "Someone's coming." he said, his voice tight with fear. Silas listened. Hoofbeats approaching from the west. Multiple horses riding fast. "Get behind those rocks," he ordered, unhitching the travois and drawing his colt. "Both of you, stay down and stay quiet." "I can fight," Jake protested, pulling the small pistol Silas had given him earlier. "You can die is what you can do. Get behind cover, now." Jake obeyed, positioning himself beside his mother, with the pistol raised in trembling hands. Silas took position behind a boulder, watching the western approach. 3 riders appeared over the ridge, silhouetted against the afternoon sun. As they drew closer, Silas recognized the lead horse, a paint mare with distinctive markings. Sheriff Wade Turner's horse. He holstered his Colt and stepped out from cover. "Turner?" The sheriff reined in his mare, his weathered face breaking into a grim smile. "Hartwell, figured you might be mixed up in this mess." "How'd you find us?" Cole's men were in town bragging about how they'd tracked down the Morgan woman. Said they was going back to finish the job. Turner's eyes found the travois where Clara lay. "That her?" "Clara Brennan. She's hurt bad. I'm taking her back to my place." Turner dismounted, approaching the travois with his 2 deputies. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm Sheriff Turner from Providence. Can you tell me what happened?" Clara's eyes focused on the lawman with difficulty. "Marcus Cole," she said. "He killed my husband. Shot me. Tried to kill my children." "She's telling the truth," Jake added, stepping out from behind the rocks. "I saw it all. Cole's men murdered my pa right in front of me." Turner studied the boy, taking in his youth, his injuries, his fierce determination. "And you are Jacob Brennan, and I'll testify to whatever court you want. I'll tell him everything." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Brave words, son. But testimony don't mean much against a man like Cole. He's got lawyers' connections. His word against a boy's." "What about physical evidence?" Silas asked. He reached into his pocket and produced the birth certificate and lawyer's letter. "This proves Cole's been defrauding his own niece's estate for years. $20,000. That's motive for murder right there." Turner took the documents, scanning them quickly. His eyebrows rose. "This is serious, Hartwell. If this is genuine—" "It's genuine," Clara said, her voice stronger now. "I was there when Lily was born. I raised her as my own daughter. Cole was happy to be rid of her until he found out about the inheritance." "Where's the girl now?" Silas met the sheriff's eyes. "Dead. Fever took her 2 days ago. She's buried on my property." Turner was silent for a long moment, processing this information. Cole don't know she's dead. Not yet. Then he's still looking for her. Still thinks he needs to silence all 3 witnesses. Turner folded the documents and handed them back to Silas. "Keep these safe. They might be the only thing standing between you and a murder charge." "Murder charge?" "Cole rode into town this morning. Filed a complaint saying the Brennan woman killed her husband and kidnapped a child that rightfully belongs to his family. He's got a warrant for her arrest." "That's a lie," Jake shouted. "He's the murderer. I believe you, son. But believing ain't the same as proving." Turner remounted his horse, gesturing for his deputies to do the same. "Get her to your place, Hartwell. Do what you can for her. I'll see what I can dig up on Cole's story, see if I can find any holes. And if Cole comes for us—" Turner's hand rested on the butt of his revolver. "Then you do what you have to do. A man's got a right to defend his home." He tipped his hat and rode off, his deputies following close behind. Silas watched them go, then turned back to Jake and Clara. "We need to move. Cole knows you're somewhere in this area. It won't take him long to figure out where." They continued the journey, pushing harder now, despite Clara's pain. The sun was setting by the time the ranch house came into view, its windows dark and cold. "Get inside," Silas told Jake, unhitching the travois. "Light the lamps, stoke the fire. I need this place warm before I can operate." Jake ran ahead while Silas carefully carried Clara into the house. She'd lost consciousness somewhere during the last mile, her breathing shallow and irregular. The infection was spreading. He could see it in the red streaks radiating from her wound, feel it in the heat pouring off her skin. "Don't you die on me, Clara Whitmore," he muttered, laying her on the bed in the room where Martha had taken her last breath. "I didn't ride all this way just to lose you." Her eyes fluttered open, found his face. "Still bossy," she whispered. "Still stubborn," he countered. "Now save your strength. This is going to hurt like hell." Jake appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "What do you need?" "Boiling water. All you can carry. Clean cloths from the chest in the hallway. And my medical bag, black leather, in the closet by the kitchen." The boy ran to obey. Silas looked down at Clara, at this woman who'd believed in him when he'd stopped believing in himself. Who'd sent her children across miles of frozen wilderness on the faith that he would help them. "I haven't done this in 4 years," he admitted. "My hands might not be steady anymore." Clara's fingers found his squeezed weakly. "Your hands were always the steadiest. I couldn't save Martha. Couldn't save everyone in the war, either." Her eyes held his clear despite the fever. "But you tried. Always tried." Jake returned with the supplies, and Silas pushed his doubts aside. There would be time for self-recrimination later if Clara died. Right now, she needed the doctor he used to be. He opened his medical bag for the first time in 4 years, his fingers finding the familiar instruments with muscle memory that hadn't faded. Scalpel, forceps, sutures, carbolic acid for sterilization. "Hold her down," he told Jake. "When I start cutting, she's going to fight. Don't let her move." Jake positioned himself at his mother's shoulders, his young face set with grim determination. Silas took a deep breath, said a silent prayer to whatever God might be listening, and made the first incision. Clara screamed. The sound cut through him like the scalpel cut through her flesh, but he didn't stop, couldn't stop. The infection had created a pocket of pus beneath the entry wound, and he had to drain it before the poison spread any further. "Hold her," he barked as Clara thrashed against Jake's grip. "I'm trying." The boy was crying now, tears streaming down his face, but his hands never wavered. Silas worked quickly, efficiently, falling into a rhythm he'd thought he'd forgotten. Cut, drain, clean, cut again. The wound was worse than he'd feared. The bullet had nicked the bone, leaving fragments that had to be carefully extracted. "She stopped moving," Jake said suddenly, his voice panicked. "Is she passed out from the pain? It's a mercy." Silas continued working, his hands steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "Keep pressure on that cloth. We can't let her bleed out." An hour passed. Maybe 2. Silas lost track of time, lost in the familiar dance of surgery, the delicate balance between cutting enough to heal and cutting too much to survive. Finally, he tied off the last suture and sat back, his hands trembling with exhaustion. "Is she gonna live?" Jake asked, his voice small and afraid. Silas looked at Clara's face, still flushed with fever but somehow more peaceful than before. Her breathing had steadied, deepened. The red streaks on her skin had stopped spreading. "I don't know," he said honestly. "The next few hours will tell. If the fever breaks by morning, she's got a chance." Jake slumped against the wall, suddenly looking every bit the frightened child he was. "I can't lose her too. First Pa, then Lily. If Mama dies—" Silas reached out and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "She's strong, Jake. Strongest woman I ever knew. If anyone can beat this, it's her." "You really think so?" Silas thought of Clara in the field hospital working 18-hour shifts without complaint. Thought of her standing up to generals and surgeons twice her age, demanding better supplies, better conditions for her patients. Thought of her saving his life when the typhoid nearly took him. "I really think so." They settled in for a long night's vigil. Jake refused to leave his mother's side, eventually falling asleep in a chair with his hand holding hers. Silas sat by the window watching the darkness outside his Colt within easy reach. Somewhere out there, Marcus Cole was planning his next move. Somewhere out there, men with guns were waiting for the order to attack. But for now, in this small room where death had visited once before, life was fighting back. And Silas Hartwell, for the first time in 4 years, was fighting alongside it. Clara's fever broke just before dawn. Silas felt it happen, the subtle shift in her breathing, the cooling of her skin beneath his palm. He'd been checking her temperature every hour through the night, watching the red streaks on her skin slowly fade, praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. "Jake." He shook the boy's shoulder gently. "Wake up." Jake's eyes flew open instantly, filled with terror. "Is she?" "She's better. Fever's breaking." The relief that washed over Jake's face nearly broke Silas's heart. The boy scrambled to his mother's side, taking her hand, pressing it against his cheek. "Mama, can you hear me?" Clara's eyes fluttered open, clearer than they'd been since Silas found her in that cabin. "Jake," she whispered, "you're still here." "Course I'm still here. Where else would I be? Thought maybe I dreamed you." Clara's gaze shifted to Silas standing at the foot of the bed. "And you? Didn't think you'd really come." "You trained me too well," Silas said. "Couldn't let a patient die without a fight." Clara's cracked lips curved into a weak smile. "Liar. You came because you're a good man, Silas Hartwell. Always were, even when you tried to hide it. Save your strength for arguing with me later." Silas moved to check her bandages. "The wound's clean. No more pus, no more spreading. You're going to live, Clara." "Told you," Jake said, his voice thick with tears. "I told you she was strong." Clara reached up to touch her son's face. "Where's Lily baby? Is she safe?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Jake's face crumpled, and Silas felt his own chest tighten. "She didn't make it, Mama. Remember I told you yesterday?" Clara's eyes squeezed shut. "I remember. I was hoping I'd dreamed that part. I'm sorry." Jake was crying now, tears dripping onto their joined hands. "I tried so hard to save her." "Not your fault." Clara pulled him close, ignoring the pain the movement caused. "Never your fault. You hear me? Never." Silas turned away, giving them privacy. Through the window, he watched the sun rise over the eastern ridge, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. A beautiful morning. Peaceful. Too peaceful. "Something's wrong," he muttered. Jake looked up. "What?" "It's too quiet. Cole should have made his move by now. He knows you're somewhere in this area. He's got men resources. Why hasn't he come?" As if in answer, the distant sound of hoofbeats reached his ears. Not from the east where he'd expected, from the south, the direction of town. "Get away from the window," Silas ordered, grabbing his rifle. "Both of you, now." Jake helped Clara to her feet, supporting her weight as they moved to the far corner of the room. Silas positioned himself by the window, watching the southern approach. A single rider appeared, pushing his horse hard through the snow. Not Cole's men, too small, too urgent. As the figure drew closer, Silas recognized him. Sheriff Turner's youngest deputy. Billy something. Silas stepped onto the porch, rifle ready. "What's wrong?" Billy reined his horse to a skidding stop, his face pale with fear. "Sheriff sent me. Cole's coming. He's got 8 men now, hired more from the mining camps. They're maybe an hour behind me." "Where's Turner?" "Trying to slow him down. But Cole's got a warrant, Hartwell, legal and proper. Says Mrs. Brennan murdered her husband, and you're harboring a fugitive." Billy's horse danced nervously beneath him. "Sheriff says to tell you he believes your story, but the law's the law. He can't stop Cole from serving that warrant." "The hell he can't. I'm just telling you what he said." Billy glanced toward the house. "If I was you, I'd run. Take the woman and the boy and disappear. Cole ain't gonna stop until he gets what he wants." "And what exactly does he want?" "Don't know for certain, But I heard his men talking last night in the saloon. They said something about papers, birth certificate or something. Said Cole would pay double wages to whoever brought it back. Silas's hand instinctively went to his shirt pocket where the documents rested. Anything else? Yeah. Cole said he was going to burn this place to the ground. Said he was going to make you watch while he did it. Billy was already turning his horse to leave. Sheriff said to tell you he's sorry. Said sometimes the law and justice ain't the same thing. He spurred his horse and galloped away, disappearing over the ridge. Silas stood on the porch, his mind racing. An hour, maybe less. 8 armed men plus Cole himself, against one broken-down doctor and an injured woman. No, not just them. He turned and went back inside. Clara was sitting up now, her face pale but determined. Jake stood beside her, his small hand gripping the pistol Silas had given him. I heard, Clara said before he could speak. Cole's coming. We could run. Head west, try to reach the next county before he catches us. I can't ride. Clara's voice was steady, despite the fear in her eyes. You know that. I'd slow you down. You should take Jake and go. I ain't leaving you, Jake said fiercely. Boy's right. Silas began loading his rifle with practiced efficiency. We don't run. We fight. Against 8 men? That's suicide. Maybe. Silas met her eyes. But I'm done running, Clara. Been running from myself for 4 years. Running from the war, from Martha's death, from everything I used to be. He shook his head. Not anymore. Clara studied him for a long moment. The Silas Hartwell I knew during the war would have calculated the odds, would have found a strategic advantage, would have used his brain instead of his pride. That man died when his wife did. No. Clara's voice softened. He just got lost for a while, but he's still in there. I can see him. Silas turned away, uncomfortable with her insight. We need to fortify the house. Jake helped me move the furniture. We'll barricade the windows, create firing positions. For the next hour, they worked frantically. Silas positioned heavy furniture in front of the windows, leaving narrow gaps for shooting. He distributed ammunition throughout the house, placed water buckets near potential fire sources, and showed Jake the hidden root cellar where Clara could take cover. I'm not hiding, Clara protested when he suggested it. You can barely stand. I can shoot. She held out her good hand, steady as a rock. Give me a rifle and put me somewhere useful. Silas wanted to argue, but he knew that look. He'd seen it on her face 100 times during the war, usually right before she did something that saved lives despite orders to the contrary. Fine, the bedroom window. You'll have a clear view of the eastern approach. What about me? Jake demanded. The root cellar. No, it's not up for discussion. The hell it ain't. Jake's voice cracked with desperation. My pa died protecting us. My sister died because I couldn't save her. I ain't gonna hide in a hole while you and Mama fight for your lives. You're 11 years old. I'm the man of my family now. Tears were streaming down Jake's face, but his jaw was set with determination. Pa's gone. It's my responsibility to protect Mama. You said I was brave. You said Pa would be proud. Well, Pa wouldn't want me hiding like a coward. Silas looked at Clara, who was watching her son with an expression of mingled pride and sorrow. He's right, she said quietly. He deserves the chance to fight for his family. Against his better judgment, Silas nodded. All right, you take the kitchen window, west side, but you stay down unless I tell you otherwise. And if I say run, you run. No arguments. Understand? Jake wiped his eyes and nodded solemnly. Yes, sir. Go get in position, both of you. They'll be here soon. The wait was the hardest part. Silas crouched by the main window, watching the southern approach, his rifle steady in his hands. The silence pressed against his ears, broken only by the occasional creak of the house settling in the cold. Silas. Clara's voice came from the bedroom, soft but carrying. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago. Can it wait? It can't. If we die today, you deserve to know the truth. He glanced toward the southern ridge. Still nothing. What truth? About Cole's leg. About why the gangrene spread so fast. Silas's hands tightened on his rifle. I don't need to hear this. Yes, you do. Because you've been blaming yourself for 15 years and it was never your fault. Clara. The hospital steward, Johnson. Cole bribed him to switch your medicines. The carbolic acid you used to clean wounds, Johnson replaced it with water. Clara's voice was steady, despite the pain it must have cost her to remember. I saw him do it. The night before Cole's surgery. I tried to tell the inquiry, but they wouldn't listen. Just a woman, they said. Just a nurse being loyal to her doctor. The words hit Silas like bullets. You're saying Cole sabotaged his own treatment. He wanted an excuse, wanted someone to blame for his misfortune, wanted a reason to hate. Clara paused. I'm sorry I never told you. After the inquiry was dismissed, I tried to find you, but you'd already left, disappeared into the frontier. Silas stared at the window without seeing it, his mind reeling. 15 years. 15 years of believing he'd failed. 15 years of thinking his hands had destroyed a man's leg through incompetence. And it had all been a lie. I couldn't save Martha, he heard himself say. That was still my failure. Martha had typhoid fever, Silas. No doctor in the world could have saved her once it reached her brain. You know that. You've always known that. You just wouldn't let yourself believe it. I should have. You should have what? Worked a miracle, defeated death through sheer force of will. Clara's voice was gentle but firm. You're not God, Silas. You're just a man. A good man who did everything he could. Before Silas could respond, movement on the southern ridge caught his eye. Riders cresting the hill in a loose formation. He counted quickly. 8, no 9. And in the center, riding a tall black horse, a figure with a silver-topped cane strapped to his saddle, Marcus Cole. They're here, Silas called out. Everyone get ready. The riders approached slowly, deliberately. Cole wanted them to see. Wanted them to count the guns arrayed against them. Wanted them to feel the hopelessness of their situation. At the edge of the yard, Cole raised his hand, and the group halted. He sat tall in his saddle, despite his wooden leg, his face twisted with cold satisfaction. Dr. Hartwell. Cole's voice carried clearly across the frozen ground. It's been a long time. Silas didn't respond. I know you're in there. I know you've got the Brennan woman and her brat. I've got a legal warrant for her arrest. Cole pulled a folded paper from his coat and waved it. You can do this easy, or you can do it hard. Either way, she's coming with me. She's not going anywhere with you, Cole. Silas's voice was steady. We both know that warrant's built on lies. Lies. Cole laughed. The woman's husband is dead. She fled the scene. What would you call that except murder? I'd call it survival. You sent men to kill them. You shot her yourself. Prove it. Cole's smile was venomous. My men are willing to testify that Thomas Brennan attacked us first, that his wife shot him in the struggle, that we were merely defending ourselves. What about the documents, Lily's birth certificate, the lawyer's letter proving you've been stealing from your own niece's estate? For the first time, something flickered across Cole's face. Fear quickly suppressed. I don't know what you're talking about. $20,000, Cole. That's what Lily was entitled to. That's what you've been embezzling for 8 years. Silas paused, letting the words sink in. The lawyer in St. Louis knows the truth. Sheriff Turner's seen the papers. Even if you kill us, the truth will come out. Then I'd best make sure there's no one left to corroborate those lies. Cole turned to his men. Burn it down. Kill anyone who runs. The men began to dismount, reaching for the oil lamps tied to their saddles. Wait. A voice from among Cole's men. Davies, the scarred one, stepped forward. You said we was serving a legal warrant. You didn't say nothing about murder. I'm paying you to follow orders, not think. This ain't what I signed up for. Davies looked at the other men, some of whom were nodding agreement. Arresting a woman's one thing. Burning folks alive is something else. Cole's face darkened. Are you questioning me? I'm saying maybe we should let the law sort this out proper. Let the courts decide. The gunshot echoed across the yard. Davies crumpled to the ground, clutching his chest, a look of disbelief frozen on his face. Cole lowered his smoking pistol, his expression unchanged. Anyone else have concerns? The remaining men exchanged frightened glances, but no one spoke. Good. Now do as I ordered. As the men moved toward the house with torches and oil, Silas made his decision. He rose from cover, shouldered his rifle, and fired. The first man went down, clutching his shoulder. Before the others could react, Silas had chambered another round and dropped a second man with a shot to the leg. Get to cover! Cole screamed, diving behind his horse. The yard erupted into chaos. Bullets slammed into the walls of the house. Glass shattered. Someone was screaming. Silas kept firing, targeting anyone who showed themselves, conserving ammunition while making every shot count. From the bedroom, Clara's rifle cracked. Another of Cole's men staggered and fell. Jake! Silas shouted. How's your side? Clear! Clear! The boy's voice was high with fear but steady. Nobody coming this way. A torch sailed through the broken window, landing on the floor near the curtains. Silas stomped it out, singeing his boot, then dove back to cover as more bullets tore through the walls. We can't hold them, Clara called. There's too many. She was right. For every man they wounded, two more seemed to take his place. The ammunition was running low. The house was riddled with holes. It was only a matter of time before one of those torches found something they couldn't extinguish. Then Silas heard it. Hoofbeats from the north. Lots of them. What now? He muttered, risking a glance through the shattered window. Riders at least a dozen coming fast down the northern ridge. At their head, a familiar figure on a paint mare. Sheriff Turner. Hold your fire! Turner's voice boomed across the yard. This is Sheriff Wade Turner. Everyone drop your weapons now. Cole's men hesitated, looking to their employer for guidance. Cole himself had taken cover behind a water trough, his face contorted with rage. You have no jurisdiction here, Sheriff, he shouted. I have a legal warrant. That warrant's been revoked. Turner rode into the yard, his deputies fanning out around him. Judge Harmon reviewed the evidence this morning, including some interesting testimony from a man named Johnson, hospital steward during the war. Ring any bells, Cole? The color drained from Cole's face. Johnson's dead. He died at Cold Harbor. That's what you thought. Turns out he deserted before the battle. Been living under an assumed name in Colorado for the past 15 years. Turner smiled grimly. He was real eager to talk once we found him. Told us all about how you paid him to switch Dr. Hartwell's medicines. How you wanted to make sure the surgery failed so you'd have an excuse to claim disability. That's a lie. Is it? Then why did you run when we came to arrest you this morning? Why did you bring these men to burn down a house with innocent people inside? Cole's remaining men were backing away, dropping their weapons, distancing themselves from their employer. One by one, they raised their hands in surrender. Cole stood alone behind the water trough, his pistol still in his hand, his face twisted with desperation. This isn't over, Hartwell, he screamed. You think you've won. You haven't won anything. He raised his pistol, aiming not at Silas, but at the window where Clara stood. Silas didn't think. He stepped out from cover, raised his rifle, and fired. The bullet caught Cole in the arm, spinning him around. His pistol flew from his grasp, landing in the snow. He fell to his knees, clutching his wounded arm, glaring at Silas with pure hatred. You should have killed me, Cole snarled. You'll regret letting me live. Silas walked across the yard, his rifle steady. He stopped in front of Cole, looking down at the man who'd haunted his nightmares for 15 years. I'm a doctor, he said quietly. I don't kill people. I save them. He paused. even when they don't deserve it. Turner and his deputies moved in handcuffing Cole and securing the surviving members of his gang. The wounded were gathered and tended to. Silas found himself automatically assessing injuries, directing treatment, falling back into patterns he'd thought he'd forgotten. Hartwell. Turner approached him after Cole had been loaded into a wagon for transport to town. That was some fine shooting. I wasn't trying to kill them, just stop them. I know, that's what makes it impressive. Turner glanced toward the house where Clara had emerged, supported by Jake. She gonna be all right. She will be. She's too stubborn to die. Runs in the family, apparently. Turner nodded toward Jake, who was trying to look tough despite the tears of relief streaming down his face. That boy's got more courage than men twice his age. He's got his mother in him. Turner was quiet for a moment. What about you, Hartwell? What are you going to do now? Silas looked at Clara, at Jake, at the bullet-riddled house that suddenly felt less like a tomb and more like a home. Reckon I'm going to start living again, he said. Been dead long enough. Clara reached him, leaning heavily on Jake's shoulder. Her face was gray with exhaustion, but her eyes were bright. It's over, she asked. It's over. Silas reached out and took her hand. Cole's going to prison. Johnson's testimony will put him away for fraud and attempted murder. The money from Lily's estate will go to you and Jake, as it should have all along. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Lily's money. She never even knew about it. She knows now. Silas squeezed her hand gently. Wherever she is, she knows. Jake looked up at them, his young face suddenly uncertain. What happens to us now? We ain't got no home. Pa's dead. Lily's gone. Silas met Clara's eyes, seeing the same question there. You've got a home, he said slowly. If you want it. This place is too big for one man. Too quiet. Could use some life in it. Clara's breath caught. Silas, I'm not asking for anything you don't want to give. Just stay. Until you're healed. Until you figure out what comes next. Jake looked between them, hope dawning on his face. You mean we could live here with you? If your mother agrees. Clara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Martha would approve, she said softly. She would. Silas thought of his wife, of the family she'd always wanted, of the child they'd never had. She always said this place needed more than one heartbeat. Then we'll stay. Clara's fingers tightened around his. We'll stay. The days after Cole's arrest passed in a blur of activity. Silas spent hours repairing the damage to his house, replacing shattered windows, patching bullet holes, scrubbing bloodstains from the wooden floors. Jake worked alongside him, asking questions about everything: how to measure lumber, how to mix mortar, how to swing a hammer without smashing his own fingers. Clara watched them from her chair by the fire, her shoulders still bound, but healing faster than Silas had dared hope. Sometimes she'd call out instructions, correcting Jake's grip on a tool or suggesting a better approach to a problem. Silas found himself smiling at her interference, even when it annoyed him. You're supposed to be resting, he told her one afternoon after she'd hobbled outside to inspect their work on the porch railing. I've been resting for 3 days. Any more rest and I'll go mad. The wound needs time to heal. The wound is fine. It's my pride that's injured. Clara leaned against the doorframe, her good arm crossed over her chest. I hate being useless. You're not useless. You're recovering. Same thing in my mind. Jake looked up from the nail he was hammering. Mama, Silas is right. You gotta take it easy. Remember what happened to Mr. Patterson back home? He tried to work too soon after his appendix surgery and his whole insides came out. Clara raised an eyebrow. His insides did not come out. That's what Pa said. Your Pa was exaggerating. But she smiled, the first real smile Silas had seen since she'd learned about Lily. Fine, I'll rest. But tomorrow I'm helping whether you like it or not." She turned and went back inside, leaving Silas and Jake alone on the porch. "She's stubborn," Jake observed. "Always was. Even during the war, she'd argue with generals if she thought they were wrong." "Did she win?" Silas thought about it. "More often than not." Jake grinned, then went back to his hammering. After a moment, he said, "Silas, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Do you think, is it okay that I don't cry about Pa anymore?" Jake's voice had gone small and uncertain. "I cried a lot at first, but now I just feel empty, like there ain't nothing left to cry about." Silas set down his tools and moved to sit beside the boy. "Grief's a strange thing, Jake. It don't follow rules. Sometimes you cry. Sometimes you feel nothing. Sometimes you're angry for no reason, or sad about things that don't make sense." "Is that what happened when your wife died?" "Yeah." Silas stared out at the snow-covered yard. "For months after Martha passed, I couldn't feel anything at all. Just hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides. Then one day, I found one of her handkerchiefs in my coat pocket, and I cried for 3 hours straight." 3 hours. Couldn't stop. Just sat there on the floor, holding that scrap of cloth, sobbing like a baby. Silas shook his head. "Grief hits when it wants to, Jake. You can't rush it and you can't outrun it. You just gotta let it take its course." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then, "I still got Lily's handkerchief, the one with the robin on it. I've been sleeping with it under my pillow." "That's good. That's a way of keeping her close. Sometimes I talk to her. At night, when nobody can hear." Jake's voice cracked. "I tell her about what happened that day. About the house and Mama getting better and you helping us. I tell her she would have liked it here." "I'm sure she would have." "You really think so?" Jake looked up at him, desperate for reassurance. "You think she's okay, wherever she is?" Silas thought about the little girl he'd never met alive, the child he'd buried in Martha's wedding quilt on the hill behind his house. He thought about the small grave next to his wife's, about the prayer he'd whispered into the frozen dawn. "I think she's at peace," he said finally. "I think she's somewhere warm and bright, where there's no fever and no pain, and I think she knows you loved her." Jake's eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back. "Thanks, Silas." "Anytime, son." The word slipped out before Silas could catch it. Son. Jake's head snapped up, his expression a mixture of surprise and something else, hope maybe, or longing. "I'm sorry," Silas said quickly. "I didn't mean... It's okay." Jake's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't mind. I don't mind at all." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink toward the western ridge. Neither of them mentioned the moment again, but something had shifted between them, something that felt permanent. That evening, Sheriff Turner rode out with news. Cole's trial had been scheduled for the spring session. With Johnson's testimony and the documents Silas had preserved, the prosecutor was confident of a conviction. "He's looking at 10 years minimum," Turner said, accepting a cup of coffee from Clara. "Maybe 20 if the judge is feeling ornery." "He killed my husband," Clara said flatly. "He should hang." "Murder's harder to prove than fraud. We've got him dead to rights on the embezzlement charges, but Thomas's death, it's your word against his." "What about Jake's testimony? He saw everything." "A boy's word against a wealthy man's." Turner shook his head regretfully. "I wish it was different, but juries are unpredictable. Cole's got good lawyers." Clara's face hardened. "So he gets away with it. He murders my husband, tries to kill my children, and he walks away with a slap on the wrist." "He won't walk away." Silas spoke for the first time since Turner's arrival. 10 years in prison for a man like Cole. That's worse than death. He'll lose everything. His reputation, his money, his position in society. By the time he gets out, there won't be anything left. It's not enough. Maybe not, but it's justice. Silas met her eyes. And justice is something. It's more than a lot of people get. Clara held his gaze for a long moment, then looked away. You're right. I know you're right. It's just hard to let go of the anger. Yes? Turner cleared his throat. There's one more thing. The estate money, Lily's inheritance, the courts have ruled that it should pass to you, Mrs. Brennan, as her legal guardian. $23,000 once all the assets are liquidated. Clara stared at him. 23,000? Seems Cole wasn't quite as thorough with his embezzling as he thought. Some of the original investments had grown substantially over the years. I don't want it. Clara's voice was sharp. That money is blood money. It's the reason my husband's dead, the reason my daughter. She stopped, unable to continue. Mama. Jake came forward, taking her hand. Lily would want you to have it. She'd want us to use it to build something good. Jake? She told me once back when we still had the farm. She said when she grew up, she was going to build a big house with lots of rooms, one for every orphan in the county. Said nobody should ever have to be alone. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She said that right before bed the night before. Jake swallowed hard. The night before everything happened. She was talking about her dream house, and I told her she was crazy, that we'd never have that kind of money. His voice broke. But now we do. We could make her dream real, Mama. We could build something that helps people. Clara looked from her son to Silas, then back again. A house for orphans. Or a clinic. Silas said slowly, the idea forming as he spoke. A proper medical clinic with beds for patients who need to stay overnight. A place where folks can come when they're sick or hurt, where they don't have to ride 30 miles to see a doctor. Turner's eyebrows rose. You thinking of practicing again, Hartwell? Maybe. Silas looked at Clara. If I had help, a good nurse can make all the difference. Clara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Lily's dream house. A place where nobody has to be alone. What do you say, Mama? Jake's face was alight with hope. Can we do it? Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Yes, she said finally. Yes, we can do it. The next few weeks were consumed with planning. Silas drew up designs for an addition to the house, a separate wing that could accommodate patients. Clara made lists of supplies they'd need: medicines, bandages, surgical instruments, bedding. Jake appointed himself head of construction, supervising the hired hands who came out from town to help with the building. Word spread quickly through the county. The reclusive Dr. Hartwell was opening a clinic. The woman who'd survived Cole's attack was working beside him. People were curious, then cautiously hopeful. A proper medical facility meant lives saved, children delivered safely, wounds treated before they festered. Had a visitor today, Clara told Silas one evening while Jake was outside tending to the horses. Mrs. Patterson from the Mercantile wanted to know if we'd be open for business by spring. What did you tell her? I told her we'd try. She looked like she might cry. Clara paused. Her youngest has been sick for months. Coughing, fever, chest pains. She's been too scared to make the trip to the city, afraid the child wouldn't survive the journey. I could ride out to see her tomorrow. You could. Clara hesitated. But I was thinking, maybe we should both go. Show the town that we're partners in this. Partners. The word hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning beyond the professional. I'd like that, Silas said carefully. Clara's lips curved into a small smile. Good. Then it settled. They rode out together the next morning, Jake staying behind to supervise the construction crew. The Patterson farm was a modest place, well kept, but showing signs of the strain that a sick child puts on a family. Mrs. Patterson met them at the door, her face drawn with worry. Dr. Hartwell, Mrs. Brennan, thank you for coming. Where's the child? Silas asked, already reaching for his medical bag. In the back bedroom. She's been coughing up blood since yesterday. My husband wanted to take her to the city, but I was afraid. You did the right thing. Clara's voice was calm, reassuring. Let us see her. The Patterson girl was 8 years old, tiny and pale against her pillows. Her breathing was labored, her forehead hot to the touch. Silas examined her carefully, listening to her chest, checking her pulse, asking quiet questions while Clara soothed the frightened child. Pneumonia, he said finally, straightening up. Caught early enough. She'll need rest fluids and careful monitoring, but she should recover. Mrs. Patterson burst into tears. Thank God. Thank God. I'll leave medicine for the fever. Clara will show you how to make a steam tent helps clear the lungs. We'll come back in 3 days to check on her. How much do we owe you? Mr. Patterson had appeared in the doorway, his face tight with concern. We don't have much, but we'll discuss payment later. Silas was already packing his bag. Right now your daughter is what matters. Outside, as they mounted their horses, Clara said, That was kind. Not many doctors would defer payment like that. They don't have much. Anyone can see that. Still, it was kind. She was quiet for a moment. You know, during the war, I watched doctors turn away soldiers who couldn't pay. Men dying on the battlefield, and they'd ask about money first. I remember. You never did that. Not once. Clara's voice was soft. Even when we were running out of supplies, even when there wasn't enough to go around, you treated everyone the same. That's what doctors do. That's what good doctors do. She reached over and touched his arm. You're a good man, Silas Hartwell. I wish you believed that. I'm trying to. He covered her hand with his. Getting easier every day. They rode in comfortable silence back to the ranch, the winter sun warming their faces despite the cold. When they crested the final ridge, Jake came running to meet them, his face flushed with excitement. Silas, Mama, you gotta see what we found. Found? Found where? In the barn behind the old feed bins. There's a whole room back there all boarded up. Must have been built years ago. Silas dismounted quickly. He'd owned this property for over a decade, and he'd never known about any hidden room. Show me. Jake led them into the barn past the horses and the stored hay to the back wall where the feed bins stood. One of the hired hands had pried away several boards, revealing a door that had been sealed shut. We didn't go inside, Jake said quickly. Wanted to wait for you. Silas pushed the door open, coughing, as dust billowed out. Beyond was a small room, perhaps 10 feet square, with shelves lining the walls. On those shelves sat dozens of glass jars neatly labeled and arranged. What is it? Clara asked, peering over his shoulder. Silas stepped closer, reading the labels. Laudanum, quinine, carbolic acid, mercury compounds, surgical spirits, a complete pharmacy preserved for years behind a false wall. Medical supplies, he breathed. A fortune in medical supplies. How'd they get here? Jake asked, wonder in his voice. Silas thought back, remembering the previous owner. A man named Whitmore, no relation to Clara as far as he knew, who'd sold the property cheap and left in a hurry. There had been rumors about his past, whispers that he'd been a doctor back east, who'd fled some kind of scandal. Previous owner must have been a physician, Silas said slowly. Must have hidden these when he left, maybe planning to come back for them. And he never did, Clara finished. All these years sitting here waiting to be found. It's like a miracle, Jake said. Just when we need supplies for the clinic, we find a whole room full of them. Clara met Silas's eyes, and he saw his own thoughts reflected there. Not a miracle. Providence. A sign that they were on the right path. Let's get these cataloged, Silas said. See what's still usable and what needs to be replaced. They worked until dark, sorting through the hidden pharmacy, marveling at the quality and variety of the preserved medicines. Many were still good, protected from light and moisture in their sealed containers. It would save them months of ordering and waiting, thousands of dollars in expenses. That night, after Jake had gone to bed, Silas and Clara sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold. The stars were bright overhead, scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. I've been thinking, Clara said softly, about what happens after the clinic is built, after everything settles down. And I've been thinking that maybe I don't want to leave. Silas's heart stuttered. You don't have to leave. I told you that. I know what you told me, but I'm talking about something different. Clara turned to face him. I'm talking about staying, permanently. Not just until I'm healed, not just until we figure out what comes next. Staying here with you for good. Clara, I know it's too soon. I know I'm still grieving Thomas and you're still grieving Martha, and neither of us is ready for anything complicated. She took a breath. But I need you to know how I feel. I need you to know that when I look at you, I see a future I never thought I'd have again. Silas was silent for a long moment. In the darkness, Clara couldn't see his expression, couldn't know that his eyes had filled with tears. Martha used to say something, he finally managed. She used to say that love doesn't die when people do. It just waits patient until it finds somewhere new to grow. That's beautiful. I didn't understand what she meant. Not until now. He reached out, finding Clara's hand in the darkness. I'm not ready for complicated either, but I'm ready to wait. I'm ready to see what grows. Clara's fingers intertwined with his. Together. They sat like that until the cold drove them inside, not speaking, not needing to. Some things were too big for words. Some promises were made in silence. Spring came slowly to Wyoming, melting the snow in patches, revealing the brown grass beneath. The clinic addition was nearly finished, a sturdy wing with 6 beds, a surgery room, and a small apartment where Clara and Jake would live. The grand opening was scheduled for the first day of April, and it seemed like half the county was planning to attend. Silas had never been comfortable with attention, but Clara insisted on marking the occasion properly. People need to see that we're here to stay, she told him. They need to trust us before they'll trust us with their health. I hate parties. It's not a party, it's a community event. She smiled at his scowl. You'll survive. The morning of the opening, Jake found Silas on the hill behind the house, standing between 2 graves. Martha's marker was weathered now, the letters softened by years of wind and rain. Lily's was newer, the wood still bright, the small carved robin at the top, a tribute Jake had added himself. You okay? Jake asked, coming to stand beside him. Just saying goodbye. Silas looked at Martha's grave. And hello, telling her about everything that's happened. You think she can hear you? I hope so. I like to think she knows. About you and your mother. About the clinic. About... He paused. About me finding my way back. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then, I talk to Lily sometimes. When I'm sure nobody's watching. I tell her about the clinic too, about the room I'm gonna have and how I'm learning to be a doctor's assistant. She'd be proud of you. You think so? I know so. Silas put his hand on Jake's shoulder. Your pa would be proud too, of the man you're becoming. Jake's eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. Silas, can I ask you something? Anything. Would it be okay if I called you Pa, not to replace my real pa? Just because you feel like family now. You and me and Mama, we feel like a family. Silas's throat tightened. He thought about all the years he'd spent alone, all the silence, all the grief. He thought about Martha and the children they'd never had. He thought about this boy who'd come to him through tragedy and somehow become the son he'd always wanted. I'd like that, he said, his voice rough. I'd like that very much. Jake smiled, a real smile, bright and full of hope, and threw his arms around Silas in a fierce hug. Silas held him tight, blinking back tears, feeling something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Come on, Pa, Jake said, pulling back and wiping his eyes. Mama's gonna kill us if we're late for the opening. Can't have that. Silas took one last look at the graves, at Martha and Lily, resting peacefully side by side. Let's go." They walked down the hill together toward the house where Clara was waiting, toward the clinic that represented their shared future, toward a community that was slowly becoming their own. Behind them, the winter wind whispered through the grass on the hillside, and the robins were beginning to sing. The clinic opening drew more people than Silas had ever seen in one place outside of a battlefield. Ranchers and farmers came from 50 miles around, their wagons loaded with families, eager to see the new medical facility. Women brought covered dishes, men brought whiskey, children ran wild through the yard, their laughter filling the air like music. "You look terrified," Clara said, finding Silas hiding in the surgery room. "I hate crowds." "I know, but they're here for you, for us." She straightened his collar, her fingers lingering on his chest. "The least you can do is pretend to enjoy it." "I don't pretend well." "Then don't pretend. Just be grateful. These people are trusting us with their lives. That means something." Silas caught her hand, holding it against his heart. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." "I'm paying attention now." Clara's cheeks flushed. "Silas Hartwell, are you flirting with me?" "Might be. Is it working?" Before she could answer, Jake burst through the door. "Pa, Mama, Sheriff Turner's here, and he's got news about Cole." They followed Jake outside, where Turner was dismounting from his paint mare. The sheriff's face was grim, and Silas felt his stomach clench with apprehension. "What is it?" Clara demanded. "What's happened?" "Cole escaped." Turner held up a hand to forestall their panic. 3 days ago. Bribed a guard, stole a horse, disappeared into the mountains. "He's coming here." Silas's voice was flat. "He's coming for us." "That's what we figured. I've got deputies watching the roads, but Cole knows this territory. He could slip through." Turner's eyes swept the crowd of visitors. "You should send these folks home. Clear the area." "And then what? Wait for him to show up whenever he pleases." Clara's jaw was set with determination. "No, we're not hiding. We're not running. If Cole wants to come for us, let him come." "Ma'am, with respect, he's dangerous." "I know exactly how dangerous he is. He killed my husband. He tried to kill my children. He's taken everything from me except my life and my son." Clara's voice rose. "I will not give him my fear. Not anymore." Silas put his hand on her shoulder. "She's right. We can't live looking over our shoulders forever. If Cole wants a reckoning, we'll give him one." Turner looked between them, then sighed. "All right, your choice. But I'm staying. And I'm sending for more deputies." "Fair enough." The celebration continued. Though Silas noticed people glancing toward the roads more frequently, hands straying toward hidden weapons. Word had spread quickly about Cole's escape. The festive atmosphere had shifted, become watchful alert. Jake found Silas near the corral, away from the crowds. "Is it true Cole's coming?" "Probably." "Are you scared?" Silas considered the question. "No, maybe I should be, but I'm not. I spent too many years being afraid of the past. I'm not going to spend any more being afraid of the future." "What if he hurts Mama? What if he hurts you?" "Then we fight back, same as before." Silas knelt to meet Jake's eyes. "Listen to me, son. Whatever happens, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If things go bad, if Cole gets the upper hand, you take your mama and run. Don't look back, don't try to help, just get her to safety." "But..." "Promise me, Jake." The boy's face crumpled, but he nodded. "I promise. But you gotta promise too. Promise you won't die. Promise you'll stay with us." Silas pulled him into a fierce hug. "I'll do my best. That's all any man can promise." The afternoon wore on. Guests began to leave their wagons, disappearing down the dusty road. By evening, only a handful remained. Sheriff Turner, his 2 deputies, and a few neighbors who'd insisted on staying to help. Clara served dinner to those who remained, her movements calm and efficient, despite the tension thrumming through the air. Silas watched her, marveling at her composure. This woman had survived war, widowhood, and attempted murder. A fugitive ex-Confederate wasn't going to break her. "You're staring," Clara said, catching his eye. "Can't help it. You're worth staring at." Sweet talker. But she smiled, and some of the tension eased from her shoulders. After dinner, Turner posted guards and established a watch rotation. Silas took the first shift sitting on the porch with his rifle across his knees, watching the darkness beyond the fence line. Clara joined him around midnight, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the chill. "You should rest." "Can't sleep." "Neither can I." She settled into the chair beside him. Jake finally dozed off. Took him hours. "He's scared. He's not the only one." Clara was quiet for a moment. "Silas, if something happens tomorrow?" "Don't. I need to say this. Please." She turned to face him. "If something happens, I want you to know that these months with you they've been everything. After Thomas died, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never feel anything again except grief and fear." "Clara, let me finish." Her voice wavered. "You gave us a home when we had nothing. You saved my life. You've been a father to Jake in ways I never expected. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you." Silas's breath caught. "You love me." "I love you." Clara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I know it's too soon. I know we're both still healing. But I couldn't let another day pass without telling you." Silas set down his rifle and took her hands in his. "I've been trying to find the right words for weeks. Months, maybe. Every time I thought I knew what to say, the words got stuck." "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know, I love you, Clara Brennan." The words came out rough, raw with emotion. "I've loved you since you walked into my field hospital 20 years ago, all fire and determination. I loved you through the war, through losing touch, through all the years in between. And I love you now more than I ever thought I could love anyone again." Clara's tears spilled over. "Silas, I was afraid to say it, afraid that loving someone meant losing them the way I lost Martha. But you've taught me that love isn't about fear. It's about courage. It's about choosing someone every day, despite the risks." "I choose you," Clara whispered. "I choose you, Silas Hartwell." "And I choose you." He kissed her, then soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Clara was laughing through her tears. "What's funny?" Silas asked. "Just thinking about how we got here. A boy dragging his sister's body across the prairie. A wounded woman in a collapsing cabin. An old doctor who'd given up on everything." She shook her head. "God works in mysterious ways." "Amen to that." They sat together through the remaining hours of darkness, not speaking, not needing to. When dawn broke over the eastern ridge, they were still there, hands intertwined, ready to face whatever came. The attack came at noon. Cole emerged from the tree line with 6 men at his back, all mounted, all armed. He rode at the center of the group, his silver-topped cane strapped to his saddle, his face twisted with cold fury. "Hartwell," his voice carried across the yard. "I know you're in there. Come out and face me like a man." Silas stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Turner and his deputies flanked him, weapons raised. Behind them in the doorway, Clara stood with her own rifle, Jake pressed against her side. "It's over, Cole," Silas called back. "You're outnumbered. Surrender now, and maybe you'll get a fair trial." Cole laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Fair trial, like the one you gave me in that field hospital, the one where you butchered my leg and ruined my life." "I tried to save your leg. The gangrene was too advanced." "Lies." Cole's horse danced beneath him, sensing its rider's agitation. "You wanted me to suffer. You wanted to punish me for being Confederate. I was a doctor. I treated everyone the same. Union Confederate didn't matter. You know that. What I know is that I walked into your hospital a whole man and left a cripple." Cole's voice dropped to a venomous hiss. "And now you've taken everything else. My money, my reputation, my freedom. You took those from yourself. You killed innocent people. You stole from your own niece. Lily was nothing, a bastard child, a reminder of my sister's shame." Cole's composure finally cracked. "She should never have been born. Don't you dare speak her name." Jake's voice cut through the air high and fierce. He pushed past Clara, stepping onto the porch beside Silas. "Lily was my sister. She was good and kind, and she never hurt anyone. You killed her." "Jake, get back inside," Silas ordered. "No, he needs to hear this." Jake's face was red with fury and grief. "You think you're some big man, Cole? You're nothing. You're a coward who shoots women and children. My pa died protecting us from you, and he was worth 100 of you." Cole's face darkened. "Your father was a fool who didn't know when to surrender. My father was a hero, and so is Silas. And when you rot in prison, nobody's going to remember your name, but they'll remember his. They'll remember the doctor who saved people, not the monster who killed them." For a moment, silence hung over the yard. Then Cole raised his pistol, aiming directly at Jake. "Get down!" Silas threw himself in front of the boy as the shot rang out. Pain exploded in his shoulder, spinning him around. He heard Clara scream, heard Jake cry out, heard the thunder of more gunshots as Turner and his deputies opened fire. Silas hit the ground hard, his vision swimming. Blood soaked through his shirt, hot and wet. Above him the battle raged, men shouting, horses screaming, bullets tearing through the air. "Silas!" Clara was beside him, suddenly pressing her hands against his wound. "Stay with me. Don't you dare leave me. Jake!" Silas gasped. "Is Jake—" "I'm here, Pa." The boy's face appeared above him, pale and terrified, but unharmed. "I'm okay. You saved me." "Good." Silas tried to smile, but the pain was too intense. "Good. Don't talk. Save your strength." Clara's voice was calm, professional, but her hands were shaking. "The bullet's still in there. I need to get it out." "Not here. Too exposed." "I know. Jake helped me get him inside." They dragged Silas across the porch, bullets whistling over their heads. Turner was shouting orders, his deputies returning fire from behind the water trough. Cole's men were falling back, outgunned and outmaneuvered. Inside the clinic, Clara and Jake lifted Silas onto the surgery table. His blood smeared across the white sheets, bright red against pristine cotton. "Jake, get my instruments. The carbolic acid, the forceps, the suture kit." Clara was already cutting away Silas's shirt, exposing the wound. "And boil water. As much as you can." "Is he gonna die?" Jake's voice cracked. "Not if I can help it. Now go." Jake ran for the supplies. Clara leaned close to Silas, her face filling his swimming vision. "You listen to me, Silas Hartwell. You are not dying today. I did not fall in love with you just to lose you. Do you understand?" "Bossy?" Silas managed. "Damn right I'm bossy. And you're going to live because I'm telling you to." Her eyes were fierce, burning with determination. "You promised Jake you'd stay with us. You don't break promises. Wasn't planning on it." "Good." Clara straightened as Jake returned with the supplies. "Now hold still. This is going to hurt." She wasn't wrong. The surgery took nearly an hour. Silas drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of Clara's voice, of Jake's small hands gripping his, of the fire in his shoulder that seemed to consume his entire body. At some point, he heard Turner's voice. "It's over. Cole's down. His men are surrendering." "Dead?" Clara asked, not pausing in her work. "No. Wounded. He'll live to stand trial." "Pity." Despite the pain, Silas almost laughed. His Clara, fierce to the last. When Clara finally finished, Silas was barely conscious. She bandaged his shoulder, covered him with a blanket, and sat beside him, her hand wrapped around his. You're going to be fine, she said softly. The bullet missed the artery. You'll need rest and time to heal, but you're going to be fine. Takes more than Cole's bad aim to kill me. Apparently. Clara's voice broke. God, Silas, I thought I'd lost you. Can't get rid of me. That easy. Jake appeared at his other side, his face tear-streaked but hopeful. Pa, you okay? Been better. Silas squeezed the boy's hand weakly. Been worse too. Glad you're safe. You saved my life. Cole was gonna shoot me, and you jumped in front. That's what fathers do. Jake started crying, then not the silent tears of a boy trying to be brave, but the deep racking sobs of a child who'd finally found safety after months of fear. Hey now. Silas pulled him close with his good arm. It's all right. It's over. We're all okay. I was so scared. I thought you were dead. There was so much blood. Shh, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Clara wrapped her arms around both of them, and they stayed like that, the three of them tangled together until Jake's sobs faded into hiccups and then into exhausted sleep. Some celebration? Clara murmured into Silas's hair. Could have been worse. How could have run out of whiskey. Clara laughed a sound that was half sob. You're impossible. You love me anyway. I do. She kissed his forehead gently. Heaven help me, I do. The weeks that followed were slow and quiet. Silas recovered gradually, his strength returning day by day under Clara's watchful care. The clinic opened officially, though, with Silas confined to bed. Clara handled most of the patients herself. You're better at this than I am, Silas admitted one afternoon, watching her treat a child's broken arm with calm efficiency. Don't be ridiculous. I mean it. You've got a gentler touch. Kids don't cry as much when you treat them. That's because you scowl at them. I do not scowl. You absolutely do. You've got a very intimidating face when you're concentrating. It's called focus. It's called scowling. Clara finished splinting the child's arm and sent her off with a peppermint stick. There. Good as new. Jake bounded in his face, flushed with excitement. Mama, Pa, the mail came and there's a letter from the lawyer in St. Louis. Clara opened it with trembling fingers, scanning the contents quickly. Her face went pale, then flushed with emotion. What is it? Silas demanded, trying to sit up despite his injury. Cole pleaded guilty. To fraud, to Thomas's murder, to attempted murder of Jake and me. Clara's voice shook. He's been sentenced to hang. The silence that followed was heavy with significance. Justice at last for all the pain Cole had caused. When? Silas asked quietly. Next month. The lawyer says we don't have to attend, but Thomas's family wants to be there. They've asked if we'll come. Silas looked at Jake, seeing the conflict on the boy's face. Hatred for the man who'd killed his father, warring with the exhaustion of carrying that hatred for so long. It's your choice, son. If you want to go, we'll go. If you'd rather stay here, that's fine too. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't want to watch him die. I don't want that to be the last thing I remember about all this. Then we stay. But, Jake hesitated. Maybe you could write a letter to read at the hanging. Something about Pa, about what Cole took from us. Clara's eyes filled with tears. That's a beautiful idea, baby. We'll write it together. They spent the evening crafting the letter, each of them contributing memories of Thomas, of Lily, of the life they'd built before Cole destroyed it. When they finished, Clara read it aloud, her voice steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. Thomas Brennan was a good man, a loving husband, and a devoted father. His daughter Lily was an angel who never had the chance to grow up. Marcus Cole took them from us, but he could not take our memories, our love, or our hope for the future. We forgive him, not for his sake, but for ours. We will not let his hatred poison the rest of our lives. We choose love. We choose family. We choose to honor Thomas and Lily by living fully, bravely, and with open hearts. That's perfect, Mama, Jake whispered. It's the truth. Clara folded the letter carefully. The only revenge worth having is a good life. Spring turned to summer. Silas's shoulder healed completely, leaving only a small scar as a reminder of that terrible day. The clinic flourished, serving families from across the county. Jake proved to be an invaluable assistant, learning quickly and showing a natural aptitude for medicine. "He's got your instincts," Silas told Clara one evening, watching Jake carefully clean surgical instruments. "And your stubbornness. He had that before I came along." Clara smiled. "True enough." "I've been thinking," Silas said slowly, "about the future, about us." Clara's smile faded into uncertainty. "What about us? We've been living together for months now, working together, raising Jake together. But we've never made it official." "Official?" Silas took her hand, his heart pounding harder than it had during the gunfight with Cole. "Clara Brennan, I love you more than I ever thought possible. You've given me back my purpose, my hope, my reason for living. I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're mine completely and forever." "Silas, will you marry me?" Clara's eyes went wide. "You're proposing now, in the middle of the clinic, smelling like carbolic acid. I know it's not romantic. It's perfect." Clara threw her arms around his neck, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." "Really? Really?" She pulled back to look at him, her face radiant with joy. "Did you think I'd say no?" "I wasn't sure. After everything you've been through." "Everything I've been through led me to you." Clara cupped his face in her hands. "Thomas was my first love. But you, Silas Hartwell, are my forever love." Jake appeared in the doorway, his face splitting into a grin. "Does this mean you're finally getting married? Because I've been waiting for weeks, and honestly, the suspense was killing me." "You knew," Clara demanded. "Pa asked my permission last month." Jake crossed his arms proudly. "I told him he'd better hurry up before you got tired of waiting." Silas laughed, a sound of pure, uncomplicated happiness. "Thank you for the vote of confidence, son. Someone had to light a fire under you." Jake's grin softened into something more tender. "I'm glad, though. Really glad. You two deserve to be happy." "We all deserve to be happy," Clara said, pulling Jake into the embrace. "And we're going to be. Together." The wedding took place on a golden September afternoon on the hill behind the house where Martha and Lily rested. Sheriff Turner officiated, his voice carrying clear across the assembled crowd, neighbors, patients, friends they'd made over the past year. Clara wore a simple blue dress, her hair pinned up with wildflowers. Silas wore his best suit, the one he'd bought for Martha's funeral and never thought he'd wear again. Jake stood beside them, holding the rings, his face solemn with the weight of the moment. "Do you, Silas Hartwell, take Clara Brennan to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for as long as you both shall live?" "I do." Silas's voice was steady, sure. "And do you, Clara Brennan, take Silas Hartwell to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for as long as you both shall live?" "I do." Clara's tears spilled over, but she was smiling. "Then, by the power vested in me by the state of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Turner grinned. "You may kiss your bride, Hartwell." Silas kissed Clara softly, sweetly, sealing their promise before God and everyone. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Jake whooped loud enough to startle the horses. Later, after the feast and the dancing and the well wishes, Silas found a quiet moment to slip away. He walked up the hill to the two graves, standing between Martha and Lily in the fading light. "I hope you don't mind," he said to Martha's marker. "I hope you understand. I'll always love you, but my heart's big enough for more than one." He turned to Lily's grave, placing his hand on the small carved robin. "And you, little one, your mama and your brother miss you every day. But we're going to be okay. We're going to live the life you dreamed about, with lots of rooms and no one ever being alone." "Pa," Jake's voice came from behind him. Silas turned to find the boy approaching Clara beside him. "We came to say good night," Clara explained. "Didn't feel right ending the day without visiting them." Jake knelt beside Lily's grave, pulling her embroidered handkerchief from his pocket. He spread it over the earth, the robin facing the sky. "Hey, Lily," he said softly. "Guess what? Ma and Silas got married. You would have loved the wedding. There was cake and dancing, and Mrs. Patterson's little girl wore a dress just like the one you always wanted." He paused, his voice thickening. "I miss you every day, but I'm okay. We're all okay. Silas takes good care of us just like Pa would have wanted. And I'm learning to be a doctor, can you believe it? Me a doctor." Clara knelt beside her son, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "She'd be so proud of you, baby." "I know." Jake leaned into his mother's embrace. "I just wish she could see it." "She can," Silas said, joining them on the ground. "Somewhere out there she's watching. I'm sure of it." They stayed until the stars came out. The three of them huddled together on the hillside, surrounded by the ones they'd lost and the love they'd found. When they finally walked back to the house, hand in hand, Silas paused at the door and looked back at the land he'd spent so many years hiding in, grieving and giving up in. It didn't look like a place of sorrow anymore. It looked like home. "What are you thinking?" Clara asked. "I'm thinking we need a name for this place. Something that honors everything we've been through." "Jake and I have been discussing that, actually." Clara's eyes sparkled with mischief. "We had an idea." "Oh." "Whisper Creek," Jake said proudly. "Because of the stream that runs through the property, and because Mama says the wind through the grass sounds like whispers." "Whispers from the past," Clara added softly, "reminding us where we came from and who we've lost." Silas felt his throat tighten. "Whisper Creek. I like it." "Then it's settled." Clara squeezed his hand. "Welcome home, Dr. Hartwell." They stepped inside together into warmth and light and the life they'd built from ashes. Behind them, the wind whispered through the prairie grass, carrying memories and promises, grief and hope, endings and beginnings, all tangled together. And Silas Hartwell, the doctor who'd stopped believing in miracles, looked at his wife and his son and knew that he'd found one after all. Not a miracle of medicine, a miracle of love. The kind that heals wounds no surgery can touch. The kind that turns strangers into family. The kind that proves beyond any doubt that even in the darkest winter spring always comes again.